welcome. My name is Sophia Josefina, and I am a life, sex, and relating coach. And I'm fascinated by all things masculine and feminine and bringing the two back together, helping people connect again on a real and deep level. So we can really show up for each other. We can partner with each other in our healing and call each other back into our power. I think a very important part of that is honoring both sides, honoring the masculine and the feminine, men and women, creating more understanding, compassion, and respect for one another. And so in this series, is my mic okay? Yeah, okay. And so in this series, I'm speaking to men to honor them and to hear their perspective and journey in relating the feminine life. Today, I'm joined by Steve Mayeda. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Yes. And as far as I know, Steve Mayeda is a men's coach who several people referred me to. And I see that he focuses a lot on fatherhood, on men's excellence, on sexuality. But instead of me trying to explain what you do, Steve, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so part of the confusion of why I'm hard to explain is because I can't do it well myself. So I didn't really ask to be a men's coach, but I am, and I've done it for like 14 years now. So it's just like ridiculous. But in that whole journey, it started out with sex and dating and took a very different approach to that, where it was like, all right, let's look at our real selves. Let's inventory ourselves. Like, let's really put it on paper, do these long journals, and then base social dynamics off of that. And through that, it was enormously healing in kind of like a cognitive way. So we built awareness, we built new habits, and then we built in, a technique based off of that. Whereas a lot of other stuff kind of wasn't going in that direction, but and still not, which is kind of crazy. So then, God, man, I huge story in my life is addiction. And so I got clean this last time, right around when I was up and coming as a dating coach. Because that was pretty powerful. In fact, I gave a speech on my clean date, which was kind of cool. But, clean dates can come and go, but that was like almost 12 years ago now. So that's kind of cool, that it was integrated in that sort of work. So that's huge. And then I was good at dating or whatever you want to call it. So I had women in my life, and man, nothing, it's like I talk to a lot of people about healing themselves. And I think that there's different tools for different things. I don't want to say this is the end all be all, but I work with people in recovery and rehabs, and there's that route to heal yourself. There's like people do psychedelics to heal themselves, and that can be done too. But sex was a huge part of that for me, and relationships. I couldn't understand it. And it's the weirdest thing, because I went through this time where I had all this trouble in my 20s, and then I became a dating coach and got some skills to meet women. And then I'd meet women, and then I'm an addict. So it integrates all this sex addiction stuff. And then most modes of recovery, like, really shame on the sex part. And I'm like, but some of this is good and some of this is bad. And so I moved kind of into that realm of like discovering myself in that piece. And man, I believe I found it at a certain point, and it was beautiful. And that changed the whole flow of my work to it be, the sexual life and all this stuff, and the inventories of self became that much more powerful. And then our relations with women. And then I got married, and I was already a dad when I, rewind back to when I was 28, became a dad, and that relationship didn't work. And then I got married to an amazing woman, and sex was such a huge part of that. It was awesome. And we had 2 kids. And eventually that relationship split. But this is really interesting. What happened in it is it built such stability for me and confidence. And in some ways that might make it has a counter to it too. So there's like weaknesses that come from it. In that time, I was able to build my business, build certain attributes of what I would call, masculinity or being a man, because I'm kind of like a big kid, and that may sound cool, but that's not always a good thing. And so it built a different dimension of fatherhood. And then the breakup was intense. And, I always think about this, and this is the funniest thing, because we were talking about the difference between men's groups and women's groups. And I love art. I love artists. And even if they're crazy as fuck, if they're like, it's all good. Like, well, actually, oh, no. You're in the Netherlands, but there's this author from Norway, Knut Hamsun, that was this fascist, but he wrote an amazing book.
Mm.
But Tori Amos wrote this song, and she says, like, threads that are golden do not break easily. And so that was like our breakup, which was so insane and very painful. But that also showed me how the stagnance in masculinity could be there. So then it's like, at this point, I'm coaching men on dating, sex, addiction, drug addiction, mainly more than sex addiction. I'm working at rehabs, which is not that big of a moneymaker. And then there's all this fatherhood stuff that has come up, and then there's relationships and making them work. And then there's divorce and custody. And so there's all this thing that comes together. And I just kind of, I broadcast it. People come to me. I'm not the best marketer, but I'm a very good coach. So that's me.
I love it. There's so many beautiful elements to your story. I don't even know where to start.
Well, let's start somewhere.
I'm going to start at the beginning. I know I once watched a TED Talk on that addiction. We think it comes like that. The antidote to addiction is actually connection. Connection,
yeah.
Right. It's just a starvation of feeling connected to another person. So we find that in a substance. And for my own personal journey, I had a few years ago, my whole life like disintegrated. My mother died suddenly. My boyfriend broke up the day after the funeral, and I thought I was going to marry him. I got very physically ill a week later. The dog died. It was just wow. It was just sad. It was at a certain point, it almost became comical. Like, really? Right. Am I in a movie? Am I here?
Yeah.
So actually what brought me healing was sex. And I just found these amazing men, and I wasn't dating to have a relationship, but I found these amazing men that would just, the only way I can describe is they would fuck me open to healing. Yeah. And it was the most cathartic release I could ever feel. And I went to therapy and all that stuff. I just wouldn't get anywhere, but somewhere during sex, something magical would happen and I would move through it.
Dude, it's just you talking makes me think of the beauty of that. Because I didn't know in my early 20s, I would have sex with people. And there was this point of just beauty. I'd be like fucked up. I'd be like drunk or on like crazy drugs or something, or like in some weird emotional wreck space. And I'd look into this girl's eyes while I was inside of her, and everything would change. And my chest would open up. Like there was all this blockage, and still could be like around my shoulders and chest. And it plagued me so bad in maybe my childhood, but then in my 20s, because it would open up. It would open up and it would feel the peace of God. And then I saw my true potential. I saw who I was. I saw past the confusion, which was first like anger and fighting against stuff and judgment and control and power. And I saw beauty. And it was so amazing. So if I go back, this is crazy. So another thing, PTSD, I'll talk about a lot too, because there's like a long history of that. So when I was 18, my first girlfriend, and many people who know me have heard this story, and so I'll brush over it really quick, but no disrespect to it. But we were dating 2 weeks. We had sex like 5 times, and we both worked at a gas station. I walked across the street, and the guys that were there that I interacted with ended up robbing it, kidnapping her, and raping her. And it was like horrible, like for hours, right? And so we get back together. We're looking for her all night. The police have her. It's all crazy. And so then, this was highly traumatic. And I almost hate saying that, because it's like, well, it was what it was. And at the time when trauma happens, this is important for people to get. You think it's normal. You just go, okay, well, I'm just going to pick up my phone and I'm going to go to work and I'm going to pick up my keys to the car and I'm going to do this. And you live. And that's how we live. And humanity has no shortage of trauma in our history, but it affects you in different ways that you may not know. And so I'd never had sex before until I got all these STDs afterwards that were permanent. And it was just like, God has cursed me. And eventually when we broke up, and like, hearing about it and the police investigating you, and it's just so like fucking insane. So then I get this gift, right, that I get to walk with for the rest of my life. This thing, which is like, and I already had anger way before that. I was already a drug addict before that. I was already in recovery before that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in and out of recovery since I was 14. So like I had problems, but then I got this gift that forced me into such humility. If you're not humble, you're going to be humiliated. So any power greater than yourself will humiliate you. But so you got to humble yourself to one thing to see it as the truth. And for a long time, that was seduction for me, big time.
Right.
And it's still,
Right.
I still honor that.
Right.
And I didn't know that. So it forced me on that path because all these problems of sex came about. Didn't
Right.
have a relationship for, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years, I forget. And then I had a relationship and like lied about it, my life, you know, and then had another relationship. And then all of a sudden I met 2 women. This is so weird. This is in the life of Steve Mayeda. Like, how did I know it? I met this one woman who was a very good person and amazing heart and great person and experiencing life with me. And then I met this other person that was like out there in space, hypersexual. And I put all of my rage into that woman, all that, like, I didn't understand it. Porn was not the same as it is now. I don't have a problem with porn, but I get how it can be a problem for some people and so on. But there wasn't like, this was 20 plus years ago. And so if there was like violence in porn, I'd be like, oh my, I'd get all excited and calm. And I'd be like, oh, I'm like the rapist. And I remember one time a girl, I was sleeping with her and she said, slap me. And I slapped her and I immediately came and I was like, fuck, I'm just like, why do I like this? So my sexuality was these 2 sides. Well, this one woman, her name was Julia. She just let me have all that. And she actually described me years later is, you know what, man, you would have to get drunk every night. You'd have to destroy something. You'd have to have sex and then you'd cry. And it was like, that was me for like 2 years with her.
So
And I was dating, or just like, but you know what it is? It's like, our world's moving so fast, but what was it that opened me up? It was a woman.
Yeah.
And a woman that, it's so funny because to me, she's like one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And if I show pictures of her to other people, they're like, but because that's not, if we only see beauty from 10 miles away, we misinterpret it, whether that's a magazine cover, Instagram or whatever. But where we should know beauty is from how we can eat it and enrich ourselves and absorb it the most. And then we can look at the Instagram stuff and be like, oh, that chick's hot or whatever. But I want to experience her. So that all happening, like there was so much healing that had to happen. And I was still lost. So then I became a dad. Like I ended up moving to get away from these 2 girls because I was with 2 girls at the same time and just didn't know. Like one served this amazing stability for me. The other one served this kind of like go off in the wilderness and purge and love and experiment these things and not be hurt. But literally, that was when I was like 25, 26. From 18 to 25, I did not know sex, like had good sex or whatever, but like was hurt so bad by it. And then the later phase would be after I got clean so then I get into pickup and become really good with women. And then I mix women up. And then I'm like, that time with Julia was never even good. I never liked sex. And so I build this belief, and this is what happens to so many of us. We go, I've never liked it. I'm incapable of it. What these people are talking about is not it. And it's funny because my story is like dramatic and hypersexual. Perhaps the more I would talk about it, most people's stories aren't dramatic and they're less sexual. So they believe like, well, Steve, you have smaller, fatter hands. This is literally what a guy told me.
Really?
But I have like thin hands. And all the guys that have smaller and fatter hands are like really good with women. And I think it's just a genetic thing. I'm like, man, that is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You just need to be in front of a woman and have time to open up. And it's such a beautiful thing, man. So that's happened to me over and over again. And you're never off that journey, no matter how much wisdom I am, because if you're not humble, you'll be humiliated. I must humble myself to the search for the feminine is me as a member of the masculine, or
Yeah.
fighting a little bit more on that side.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I love what you said. It's just about being in front of a woman and taking your time to open her. Can you talk a bit more about that? But what you mean, like, what is it that actually matters as a man when you are in front of a woman?
Man, you guys both got to be yourselves. So, I mean, this could mean so many different things, but as you talk, it reminded me of a couple poor sexual experiences that have happened more recently. And so, look, here's the curse. Like I don't have a problem meeting women and getting into a sexual relationship. And some people think that's great, but that's bad if you're bad walking into it, or that's bad if they're bad walking into it. And it's easy to say yes to sex. It's like, it's easy to say yes to $1,000, but that $1,000 may build a bad habit of spending, or buying the wrong thing, or sending you off on the wrong path. And so one thing that I got was like, I've had some amazing experiences of sex post the splitting with my ex, and no disrespect towards her, like I don't like it's kind of odd to talk about this because I don't want to disrespect her in that way. But this is my journey. I don't know. So I'm just going with it, but probably a mistake. so, but like I had some amazing experiences that were like very good to bring things back to what femininity is. And when you're with the same person for a long time, there's like this, the devil says to Jesus in Last Temptation of Christ, the book and the movie, it says that there's one woman in the world with many faces. And I think as a man, when you see one face for too long and you mix that up with the overall feminine, you get confused. And I'm not saying that was a mistake. I'm very grateful for the 7 years that I had with her, because it was not a mistake. But part of your masculinity changes, which is my fault, not her fault. And not
what
the
changed?
Relationship's fault.
What changed?
I think man, this is interesting because this comes out of like some weird abstract meditation shit, but this is kind of my starting place with it, is a lot of my anger and rage. And I don't want to say that, I think men need to understand that anger and rage, and women too, is a part of us. It's not something that means you're in a weird place, but it comes out. It's one of the things that does come out when we're in a weird place. But my anger, my rage, my confusion, my not knowing an answer came from my masculinity not being worked in diversity with that one woman. And so because I need help, like, a lot of people talk about psychedelics and finding, God, which I'm all for it, but it's also a switch, and the real work is done afterwards. And if you don't need it, you shouldn't take it. So for me, I now need women because I'm searching for it again. But that's also a lazy form of seduction,
right?
Or it's a form of seduction, but it's lazy, not overall, but it's lazy in the sense of, man, I couldn't find the feminine in this one that would balance out the diversity of the masculine. I couldn't find the, whatever you want to call it, the divine feminine or so on. So in that search, man, I found so much beauty in women that is amazing. And there's more that I want to see. And then, man, I basically hooked up with a couple chicks and it wasn't good. It was just like, what am I doing? Okay, I'm hard. She's kind of into it. Let's just go. Let's go. And that is the opposite. So that sex is a physical release, which is a necessary thing. That sex is a biological tool. But sex opens up our minds, our bodies. If you believe in spirit, it opens up all this stuff. And when we are missing parts of it, it's not good. And I think that's what guys go through with masturbation and so on, is like, you're missing part of that. Whereas like for me with masturbation, it's like, okay, cool. Like I get it. There's a separation. So, seeing the beauty of a woman is something we don't have to work towards. Yet so many of us with our world and our society, we make it very hard. And it was hard. And so there's a lot of reasons why I didn't sync up with these women. Maybe we both just don't click. I mean, you know, so what? I mean, I can be a great guy, but people are going to say no.
Yeah, you don't have to be everybody's thing.
Right. People are going to deny me. And then also they may have had, you know, some blockages around stuff.
Yeah.
But it's so weird how it happens. Basically, if you come to sex with a lot of fucked up shit, and they come to sex with a lot of fucked up shit, sex is so powerful that it will oftentimes regulate it into something that works because, you know, it's bigger than us. But sometimes it devoutly tells us, like, you fucked up, and you walk out of that going like, Jesus, what did I do? The fuck am I?
I was going to ask you something completely different, but you're just reminding me of a discussion I've been having a lot with the women's group that I'm leading. And we're like, when we're coming both from maybe a fucked up place and there's a toxic relationship, the sex is amazing, right? It's all fire and like dangerous love is like, we're engaged, we're online. And then you have a healthy love in your life and it's very calm.
Yeah.
And it's not bad, but it's also, it's not so like I'm in that situation myself now. I'm in a relationship that is healthy. And I'm normally in my previous relationships, I had to be online everywhere because this dude was doing something weird constantly. So I had to figure him out. I had to like constantly be there. With this man, I don't have to at all. And so I'm not as engaged as I normally am.
Right.
So how do you, like, what's your view on this, on like moving from the very intoxicating love into the more like maybe healthy relating that is not as fiery?
Interesting. So like, it's funny because I speak from myself and then I speak from kind of how I would coach, but from myself, what I would say, because there's pain that can happen when we get out of balance in relationships. And it's easy to get in a relationship. So there's so many benefits to being stable. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. Like everything gets built from stability. Like in the US right now, there's all this chaos and people are like rebel on both sides, like, or whatever, 50 sides to this whole thing that there are. In rebellion, okay, cool, but nothing great comes from rebellion. A turn comes from rebellion, and then what's built is after that turn that comes from stability. And so stability in relationships is such a great thing for you to experience. But in that, for me, there were times where I got toxic in all these ways, got stagnant, got dead in certain ways. But I think for my second half, I've lived a lot in my life and I have no bucket list. When it comes to sex, like I'm all for doing something new. I'm like, well, man, I've never done that. Cool. But there's nothing going like, man, I missed out on my 20s. Like, no, that's totally cool. I got it. So I don't have a bucket list. And I feel that, that for her, that wasn't checked. And there was this huge rebellion. I mean, if you wanted to look at it from the outside, like, that was happening, and to not know how to manage that. So the dark side, or the like, man, I can be a hoe, or man, I can be a man, I can be dominant, man, I can be, you know, one thing Zan talked about like 12 years ago, and I remember it, is he goes, you know, in a relationship, a woman still gets hit on, but the reason why you as a man need to continue to talk to women is because you don't get hit on by women.
Yeah.
You need to still talk to women as a man to relieve that pressure. So you got to know, like, at least for me, it was always okay to explore that dark side, but not disrespect the relationship. And, you know, maybe my ex might argue that, but I think for her, to me, that was confusing. Yeah. Or to her, that was confusing. To me, I had outlets for it when the confusion came up. And I have a huge, I have a huge support system for it. So I think that can happen where you get a little bit lost in those ways. Now, in the more overall, like me coaching somebody, how bad can we fuck up? If we fuck up, we're supposed to. And when you start to look at the journey of you,
I like that.
and you look at the journey of, if you believe in like the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
side, if you believe, if you take that journey, it goes so, like, how bad can we fuck up? We can't.
Right.
And we put our pressure, and I'm kind of talking to myself here. I put this pressure on myself of being on the right path.
Yeah.
And that in itself is part of like the man-made sin or confusion or whatever you want to look at it.
Making yourself wrong
So
somewhere. Yeah.
it's tough,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, there's a right way, but I want to
Mm-hmm.
do the wrong thing. And I keep going back to this, like, all right, well, nobody's perfect,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how do I let that happen?
Yeah.
If I am always perfect by force,
Mm-hmm.
that's control.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to come back to what you were talking. You speak very powerfully about anger in men. And I notice from the men I work with, there's so much fear of their own anger. And then it comes out in weird ways, right? But there's so much fear that they also don't use it anymore. So they've completely denied themselves. And so a thing that I see a lot of men struggle with is, for instance, they know somewhere that woman wants to be pushed against the wall, but they don't know how to do that anymore without scaring her, right? They're like, I want to respect her. This is for me, like the modern man. It's like, but I want to respect her. And all these women are like, fuck, push me against that wall, dude.
Yeah,
What
so
is
I don't have a problem with any of that.
you,
But
yeah, I can see that you don't, but I'm sure you've had many men in your work that struggle with this, right? Like this kind of complete denying of your power.
Yeah. That world is so far from me when I was afraid to do that, but I was afraid to do that for many years. And like I said, from 18 to 26, that was like out of my, like it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But funny enough, I was in Medellin and I was talking to Hans, which was great. And
Hans.
he was like, yeah, man. And so was, grabs her by the neck and it's just what we all do. And then I started talking and Hans and my other buddy were just like horrified. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to make a fucking video when I go to travel somewhere else. And I'm going to show you what. Anyway, they were pretty horrified by what I was saying. I'm like, no, man, it's fine. So what we're saying here, so this is the problem with anger, is we're not, and it's so weird. So coming from a woman, anger to men, it's like, so really like men and their masculinity, they don't want to listen to that. And to me, it's like, what the man, what did you just say? But it's true, right?
Yeah.
It's a totally different language, and everybody needs their groups. Like to think this is like a world for a man, a world without women is a world against women. A world without men for a woman is a world against man. So, or did I say that right or whatever? But you get it. So we do that all the time. We think masculinity means to isolate as men, and that's bullshit. We need to isolate. We need to have our men's groups. We need to have our privacy. We need to be able to talk shit. We need to be able to make mistakes. We need to be able to say the wrong thing. We need to fail in our relationships. And again, like when we make mistakes, we're going to make big mistakes. Like as men, like the pressures they feel, like we're going to fuck up our family. We're going to fuck up our finances. We're going to fuck up our futures. And this responsibility is huge. We need to be able to go to our men's group and talk about it. We need to be able to go to our men's group about saying the wrong thing, about being too chauvinistic or arrogant, or maybe it's in the realm of stealing, or, men go to jail from violence, money, and sex. It's these predominant things, but it could be more. But we go to jail, especially in ourselves, with our secrets and not being able to talk about that stuff. And it's fucking crazy. So basically our anger is going to happen and we can fuck up. And dealing with addicts, like addicts go to jail, addicts could be in jail and you're talking to them. You can still work out your anger, but to deny it and to control it is wrong. So here's the thing with anger and sex. Like you grab a woman by the throat, or we go with the Hans European dainty non-American, like, oh, and I grab her and I tell her, but I'm like, you don't open her mouth and spit in it and tell her that she has to agree. So when I'm doing that, it's not to overpower somebody. That we're playing in this thing where like we're both in agreement. And like we use this word called consent, which is interesting because consent generally means that one person puts something on another person, but participation is really it. It's an exchange. Like we're both equal.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm dominant and that's clear. And other times she's dominant and that may not even be in the realm of sex. So we need to realize that like both parties are really necessary. They're really, really necessary.
Yep.
And to think one is better than the other it breaks unity. And so my individuality is dependent upon the unity of what's happening here. So my individuality as a man is dependent upon that. And I know a lot of people are like, well, just say the alpha shit or whatever, or say the like speaks to the feminine shit. It's more complex than that, man. And like, so whatever angle helps you get to that side of things, the better. But like when I'm fucking, sometimes I'm putting aggression out, but it's only if she likes it. I remember one time actually I was having sex with a girl. It was so crazy. I wish I would have recorded it. It's like, I remember how amazing it is, but then like sometimes the fantasy or the memory is better than the reality. But she was like speaking in Spanish. It was all crazy. And I was like, this is insane. Like this woman's sexuality is nuts. And I'm having sex with her and I grab her mouth and I open it up and I spit in it while I'm fucking with her, like really intense, right? And she's just like, wait. And it just sucked. It broke the whole sexual dynamic because there was a break in it. So if I was dominant, and she actually said one of the best quotes of all time, man. But if I was dominant, then like I would have kept doing it. I'm not doing it to be, there's a big difference between actual violence and sex. And one of the best quotes she said, because man, she was really beautiful. And like we were like kind of hanging out and she's like, I'm like, hey, look, if we fuck, like, man, you're going to make me stupid because you're like too. And she's like, I said like, I forget what she said. She said, then have me. And I was like, all right. And then I was like, boom. So, but it was the weirdest dynamic of just sitting there like, well, wait a minute. If we do this, it's going to get crazy because you're like too much. And she's like, then you need to have me. And I'm like, boom. But so that sort of thing was broken because connection is the God that we're serving in sex. And not my individual, stuff. My individual stuff gets worked out and identified and empowered, but because of the connection. And that's very, very important. So the weird thing is so we don't have to get taught sex. That's the other thing. We can, but like, we don't need to be told like, oh man, like I like it a little bit rough. Most people come to that. And if you don't know that, you can. There's just so much to it. Anyway, go on.
You're saying so many interesting things. Okay. I think I'm very curious about this part. What do you think men actually need or want from women? So something in that, what you were just saying, like that she said, so have me. I think there's so much wisdom actually in that sentence. I think what men really want, you're catching me at an interesting time in my exploration of the feminine. And so this is, again, me personally, and then me coaching. So what men want is they want things to be okay. So we talk about all these psychological issues with the mother and so on. And I think that's all very legit. I don't want to diminish that. But there's also a mothering quality from all women that if you just diminish it by going like, oh, that dude had a bad relationship with his mom. No, everybody finds peace with that. That is the beauty of the feminine, is that, again, you can put all of your rage in it. You can physically pound it sexually, not in a violent way, but like you can offer so much to it and the muscles and all of that, and she takes it in the most vulnerable spot. It's so amazing. Oof, I love that.
And in that, I mean, think about that. Like it's so
sorry, that's so beautiful.
No, but hold on, I gotta go relieve myself. No, but that was too much for me to handle.
Getting a little
but think about that, like her most vulnerable spot in between her legs and the belly, there's not a big bone structure. There's the hip bones, but you're offering all of that to it with power and grabbing her. And a man, his general instinct or instinct or autonomic reaction is to flex and you're ejaculating and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she can take all that. It's crazy. You know,
Yeah.
a man's muscular structure at one of its highest moments, maybe not the highest moment, but
Mm-hmm.
is just roll the dice. You know, you're on top of a woman or she's on top of you or whatever. And whatever position you're in, you can do that. And she's fine,
Yeah.
you know, and she can take that and then literally she can grow it into a baby, or metaphorically take your pain and grow it into something.
Transmute it. Yeah.
But it's no longer yours for a moment. And that's where you get that relief of like a man's true self. A man's true self is shortly after he's made beautiful love to a beautiful woman, and everything else is just this reaction. But that's it, man. A man in some ways is looking for that.
Yeah.
And the mother, or like the Mother Earth, or all these metaphors for what a mother is, it takes things and it grows things, and we can fuck up. And there's also an aspect to, man, see, I don't even know what women do. Like, you don't have, maybe, I mean, if you're a lesbian, that's cool, but like, fuck, you're fucked. Now you have no outlet for this. But like, but how you can go there and it can be okay.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like when men are saying, like, seriously, when men are saying like, man, I made this decision and 5 years later, my family's fucked. Like, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying like, no feminine energy is saying that's okay, because a wife is in the mix with them, you know, and no feminine energy is going like, this is you, you know, you can be okay. You can be this. We make mistakes. And there's, sure, there's this world of society where you have to play by the rules, and you may have made a mistake, but there's a part of you that needs to be strong now, that I want to calm your anger and go to it. So I think in many men, they need that. So that's kind of like a big spot where I'm at in this journey of discovering that and that awesomeness, but also in a coaching aspect. Yeah. You know, men want women because they're lost as men, and they're out of touch with their masculinity, and women are the key. And, you know, you talked about, you know, men with anger, you know, from the men's side of things, men with anger, they think when they go through a breakup, they need to control and overpower women. Yeah. And I always tell these guys, like, that are in the red pill, it's like, dude, all the stuff you wished you could do, I've done. And then after my wife and I split, like, if you look at my relationships, I didn't even try. And I'm not necessarily, I don't think this is the right way, but like, I have all the stuff you guys, whatever, talk about, like, of power and, you know, money and women or whatever. That's not what I'm looking for. Like, sometimes that happens. And I'll just really quickly, for guys out there that are really into that, probably don't listen to your show. If you know how to fuck, if you know how to bang, my buddy Eric Everhard is coming out with a book on sex. He's a porn star. He's one of my
I saw that.
friends.
Yeah.
You should totally interview him.
Yeah.
I am very good in bed. I read that book, and it comes out in October, but he let me preview it. And dude, there's some shit in there that I feel bad because I was not able to experience with my ex-wife, and she deserved it. She got enough or whatever, but she's just sick of me. But like like, man, everybody afterwards, it was like, got a lot of good shit. And it's, I've never read something in a sex book. Like, so the guys that wrote like the Sex God Method, which is like a PUA classic, those guys suck. Like, I've done gangbangs with them, and they were the dudes sitting off in the corner, like, going, okay, like, Steve, can you help me get hard or something like that? So like, that's, dude, Everhard's book is like, oh, wow, I do this, and he's saying not to do that. Let me try this. Immediate change. Like, but if you know how to have sex and you know how to meet women and get there or whatever, you're going to start seeing all these things of like, you need a woman to worship you, and to, like, that shit happens with seduction. And you worship her. Like, that doesn't mean that you don't worship her. Right. Like, you want a woman, you're going to get mad at this maybe, but everybody gets mad. Every woman gets mad at this. Every guy's like, this is cool. You treat a lady like a lady and a bitch like a bitch. But if you treat a lady like a bitch, she's a bitch. She will be a bitch and fuck you up. If you treat a woman like a little girl, she can only be a little girl. And so guys are going in there with that sort of mentality of sex, and that's all you're going to get. Dude, sometimes I want a girl, you know, but ultimately I want the feminine. I want a woman. And I need to treat her that way. And there's, I don't know, there's like a 20-year-old that I'll hook up with, and then there's a girl in her upper 30s, totally different experience of who they are and where they're going. And, you know, it's cool, but they offer different things to the equation of it. So I don't know. So many men are looking to find the feminine in control and power, and that ultimately disempowers themselves. Their pain shows you where the problem is, but doesn't show the answer. Their pain shows them how to have, you know, experience femininity. And it's like, why do you even want it if you're just going to try and beat it up? And I don't know, whatever.
Why do you think they try to control it? What is the
pain? Fuck pain.
What happens if they wouldn't?
Oh, well, they'd feel their pain and they'd have a shitty couple months, and then and if they could have a shitty lifetime. But there's so many coaches now that they could just go like, hey, can you, I mean, this is the first thing I did. So I'm a coach, and I don't take advice from many people. Like I told Hans the other day, like he was like, Steve, we need to be allies. I'm like, I thought we were already allies, man. And anyway, but like, shut the fuck up with your bullshit. But anyway, so I don't always take advice from anybody, but what did I do when I didn't know what to do? You know, I raised my hand, and that's the worst, dude, because man, like I would work in a rehab and I deal with people who have PTSD, and when mine started to come back, I'm like, no. And then like the other counselors and therapists in the rehab were like, dude, that like, you need to start like something now. And then you listen, and sometimes I don't listen. And then when I don't listen, I go and fuck stuff up and whatever. But we have so much availability that if a man, so our reaction to pain is so obviously stupid that we just go for the opposite of that pain. Right. So it's like, man, I feel alone. I don't like feeling alone. Or I'm going to get a bunch of chicks or whatever it is. And sometimes you need that. You need, so if your pain is so overwhelming that you build anxiety and you can't function in normal life, you need your distractions, you need your relief. But ultimately, like, remember we were talking about rebellion and our society or whatever, like we need to find stability. So we need to get into function where we're not fucking reacting all over the place. And then we need to go, okay, I'm going to feel my pain. I want to be alone. I don't want to, look at this. I don't want to see where my part in this is. And it's resistance always, you know, and you have some people. And so here's the other thing. If you meet other people in pain, so it's kind of like, I'm a big fan of believing in something bigger than yourself. And that could be a group of men. So if I'm angry and I put my anger in other men that are angry, it will not be good. That might be necessary for a bonding experience, but the solution in that is really terrible. It turns into judgment, control, power over, all that sort of shit, and eventually violence. I mean, it's just, it follows the chain of scarcity. It's so obvious to see, but and all these motherfuckers are so like logical, like, oh well, science and Jordan Peterson said this, and like, you know, like I just remember like in pickup, it was like, well, Richard Dawkins says this. Richard Dawkins doesn't give a fuck about your bullshit theory. Like it's like you're somehow like anyway. But so then if we put our pain in ourselves and try and find it, that's even worse, because then it just goes into isolation and internal anger and all the incel shit we see. But if we put our pain in, let's say, a group of other people that have been there and done that, who've seen the way, and then we have some other people who are on the same path who are also in pain. But there's some people that have seen the way, and then there's some people that are just coming in. We really find a much better solution because we get that human experience. But you need guys to go like, man, I was assaulted as a kid, or I was bullied as a kid, or this and that happened to me sexually, and like, man, now I see a different way. But it wasn't easy. like I hated for a lot of years. I caused a lot of damage in these ways. Like people need to tell their stories rather than just go like, I made it to the other side or be angry. It's like if they can talk about, because the journey is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritually, I think in our life, we don't get to a point where we're ever going to get back to the divine, and I do believe we all came from the divine, and we're just pinging that.
Yeah.
And so like in our lives, like let's say we end up in prison or jail, that seems really bad in society. And then there's some other person that like, ends up on top, and that seems really great in society. But in that sense, and I think people should work within the world of man in that way and take it very seriously and be as successful as you want to be. Find the life that you can make, because there's so many ways to do it. But we also need to realize that the standard is that divine or something bigger than yourself, or maybe the feeling you feel with a group of people that you care about, and it doesn't go into this esoteric spiritual shit.
Yeah.
And you're only going to ping that because that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Just like if you always felt how you felt after you had amazing sex with a beautiful woman. Yeah. And you're yourself.
Yeah.
But the job is that you're not supposed to always be yourself.
Yeah. And the duality of that.
Yeah. You're supposed to be searching for it. And so that darkness is so important, because space is all, if space is real, right? Now, space is all black. It's all darkness, little stars.
Yeah.
And light is so powerful that it pokes through. A little bit of light kills the phenomenon of complete darkness.
Maybe you recognize this as well. Like I know for myself, at the depths of grief, and I've been through really bad chronic illnesses, like really extreme pain. At the depths of it, the moment I thought I could not handle it anymore, it turned into light.
Yeah. And that's true too. And I know some people, so in the addiction world, I know a lot of people who are dead and who've committed suicide, and I understand that pain, and I actually honor it in this way, because I've been in the pain where it's like, all right, I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to do a bunch of heroin to pass out. Right. And to make it through that night, and sometimes night after night of not doing either of those things is very tough. And so when a person caves to it, not that I'm encouraging it, but if we deny that phenomenon of humanity or say it is weak or whatever, like, no, man, I don't want to say there's an honor in any of that, but there's a human choice and a phenomenon that happens that if we don't see it for what it is, and that's what I will call honor, then we're denying it, and we're putting that off in the corner, and then that more people can find and go to and disappear, when they're in that pain. So sometimes pain gets so extreme that it totally breaks us. But, like they always say, the more you fight it, and whenever I'm in pain, I'm like, well, what am I fighting? How can I stop fighting it and just let it happen? It's really hard to see, but denying it and distracting yourself will inevitably make that pain come harder. It might disappear for a little while. The worst part about that is like, then when you have kids or like a really big moment in your life happens, then that pain comes out at those times, and that's not good.
Yeah. A totally different question. I've been, for myself, researching a lot, like how as women we belittle men, criticize men, mommy them, lecture them, one way or another, do not call them into their power. So for instance, a thing I used to do a lot was do the emotional work for my guy. So I'd be like, what's going on? I could see something's going on. What are you feeling? What are you feeling? I saw something was happening. And I was doing it for him. The moment I stopped doing that, and I just assumed that my man is totally capable of taking care of himself, things shifted completely, because I was not there as the caretaker. I was not there as the social worker, right? I was not there as the mommy. So I'm curious on your perspective, maybe on what we can do as women or as the feminine to call men into their power, to call men into their masculinity, into their authenticity, into their, the primal stuff we were talking about earlier. What can we do?
And the dumb answer is fuck them and make their dicks feel special. And then all of a sudden they're like confident, right? It's like, oh my God,
I'm special.
I do have a beautiful cock. What? No. That's the dumb answer. And then that, like, if that doesn't come with a deeper meaning,
Yeah.
It'll totally implode and fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be part of the equation. Like if, so, it's interesting because man, I talk to so many men's coaches and I see this as a problem for myself, but like I still go for it. So many men's coaches are in the dating world go for, even if they're outside of the power, like type shit, there's still this dysfunction of wanting a woman to care for you because it feels good. I mean, that's like so much of a mother thing, but it gets used to massive dysfunction.
Yeah.
So a man's, like, my greatest power came from the stability that my ex gave me from just being there. So she, was very loving and caring in all these ways. And then it added stability for me to be myself and work. And maybe it was the right time, because there's many women who gave me that.
Right.
In my 20s and in my early 30s, but I was not ready to, like, okay, I'm empowered. And I brought more dysfunction probably than the norm to those, you laugh, but this is just an insight for me right now. No, but I brought more dysfunction than the norm to those relationships. And so, like, when I was with my ex, who was this amazing woman from way back when, like, she did that all for me, but I was just so erratic that I couldn't do it. And she would always tell me, it's like, no, man, you have so much potential. And even my ex-wife was like, you have so much potential with these things, like, do it. But I think there's different teachers at different times. And in a way, like, in this sort of enslavement to the sexes, that's what I'm looking for, my next feminine teacher or component or counterpart or whatever. But that strength, for me, all came from stability, but it also came from me massively working on myself. Like, when it comes to, like, addiction recovery, if you actually do the stuff in it, like, you really work on yourself quite a bit. So when I had done that, it made it possible for that stability and that peace. So yeah, at first it was like, oh, you're so amazing, you're beautiful, like, I'm getting all this attention, I'm, like, adored or whatever. And oh, my dick is good, okay. So I fuck good, okay. So that, like, that helped, but then it calmed down and it was like, okay, there's a home, there's a routine, there's a thing that we do, and there's a peace and that stability. And that's probably the greatest gift that femininity brought to me. And everybody is different.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a pretty erratic person. And so when that peace came and I was good enough to, or like at peace with myself enough to see it, I was able to really go. And that was a really awesome thing,
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about the feminine?
Man, I just flashed to, well, I'm looking at you. So it's like, okay, lips, facial expressions. Like, that's amazing. Like, when you do that, but then like at first I just went full carnal in the Rolodex of my mind. It was like lips, facial expressions, eyes, how they smile back at you, how they react, their pussies, smelling their pussies, eating their pussies. Okay. Like, fucking their pussies, seeing how it's shaped. And then it's like, the greatest thing about the feminine is that, it brings peace. It's the most amazing thing. And I just want to put this out there too, because, man, I don't give a fuck about dominance or any of these fucking roles that people put out, but I can be pretty dominant. Like, when you get to people talking about the debate and I read their shit, I'm like, oh man, you're like, man, go talk to Hans or something. But you're not putting, like, bags over people's heads and shit. I don't know, whatever. So that, like, but when I'm talking to, and I'm joking with Hans. We always joke, and it's probably too much. And, like, me, Hans, and Michael Sky, it should probably stop. But he's really good. He's really good. If you seek him out, he teaches good stuff.
Yeah.
So when I hear people talk about, like, dominance, I'm like, I've done all that, but I don't always need it. And I don't always want to be dominant.
Right.
With women, the key is that it shows me so much, and it shows the feminine aspects to myself, and it shows the seeking of those things, and it completes me. All the MGTOW guys get pissed off at me when I say this, like, you're two different things, and you come together, and you're incomplete as a man if you don't have the feminine countering you out. We're two different things. There's one thing, and it separates because it has to or because that's just how it happened. And I ended up on the man side, and when they come together, you get back to that one thing, and that is different than you, and that is different than her. And so that's sex too. Like some chick that is I'm such an asshole. Some woman, she'd get all mad. She's like, Steve, it's a woman. But she's like a women's coach, and she has a whole recovery thing going on. And like she was saying, like, alchemy is, when the changing of two different things into one. And she went on this whole fucking new age thing about it. And I was like, man, that's exactly how I've always thought about sex.
Yeah.
And so the best thing about the feminine is that it completes me, but it's this thing that I will never understand. I will never get. I'm a fan of, and I always seek. And the more we think we know it, the more we discount it. But if you have sex and you open up during that sex, you'll get it. I think that's an important thing.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's all go masturbate or fuck our chicks or dude or whatever and clear it out.
I think what I really like about how you speak is that you very much empower the primal in a man. It's about fucking. It's about anger. It's about, surviving.
Yeah, see, I never think of that. But then all these like men's coaches are like the primal. And, like, oh. And then I look at myself and I'm like, I think I'm more than you are, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you are. And it's good that you're not categorizing yourself as much. But I really appreciate that. I really respect that. Because I think we, especially with the new age stuff, we try to like kind of become more than that or like become better than that. And it's just a way to dissociate from really what it is to be in a body. What is it to be in a body? There are these urges. There's this this body that wants something, and to honor that, maybe to respect that.
Yeah.
That's your essence, right?
Oh, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But that whole spiritual side shouldn't be discounted either. But it also reaches a particular audience too. So
yeah, absolutely. And everybody has their own way and their own language and their own, and that's totally okay. But I'm always a bit looking out for the dissociation of like, I feel like shit, but I have to be grateful and positive, right? That's dangerous.
Yeah, and that's happened dangerous. To me. Like, I've gotten like really into meditation, and I'm just like, why do I need a bank account? Why do my kids need to eat? We're all on this like
we're all the same thing. We can just look at the sun.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And I really like your perspective. And
cool.
Yeah, really appreciate this. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yep, definitely. And we'll talk more next time. Maybe I'll interview you so I can actually hear you talk. So
I would love that. Yeah, please interview.
Don't shut up.
Okay.
All right.
Stop the recording here.